Imagine you're sitting in this sweltering apartment in Dallas right now.
Oh, yeah, just absolutely baking.
Right, it's 107 degrees outside, your air conditioning is just struggling to keep up, and you decide, well, I can't afford to drive to a baseball game this weekend anyway.
Because gas just spiked well over $4 a gallon.
Exactly. So, you sit on your couch, and an artificial intelligence algorithm decides which partially AI-generated movie you're going to stream instead.
It sounds like a very isolated, highly personal modern weekend.
It does, right. But what if I told you that the extreme heat, the price of your gas, the fact that you stayed home, and that AI algorithm serving up your entertainment, what if I told you they're all being dictated by a drone strike halfway across the world?
I mean, it's the ultimate butterfly effect.
Yeah.
Only instead of a butterfly flapping its wings, it's a militant group in the Red Sea launching a missile, and the resulting hurricane lands directly on your mortgage rate and your digital entertainment.
Spot on. So welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to examine a stack of dispatches, financial filings, and global headlines from Saturday, July 25, 2026.
And it is quite a stack.
It really is. And we're going to map out that exact collision you just mentioned.
Yeah.
We want to trace a single geopolitical thread to show you how military maneuvers in the Middle East are fundamentally rewiring the global economy, the tech sector, and just the physical reality of how you live.
It's all connected in ways that are just fascinating to unpack.
But before we dive into the mechanics of how this all works, I do need to put a quick disclaimer on the table for everyone listening.
Yeah, super important today.
Right, because the landscape we're analyzing is layered with some very intense politically charged dynamics.
Yeah.
I mean, we're dealing with an active transition of power between the Biden and Trump administrations.
Not to mention deeply polarizing U.S. election politics.
Exactly. Plus Middle East war policy and aggressive domestic regulatory fights. So just to be clear, we are not here to validate or criticize any of those political viewpoints.
Right. Our sole objective is to impartially break down the raw data and the strategic realities on the ground.
Yeah, we just want to help you understand the machinery driving these events. So, okay, let's unpack this by starting at the absolute epicenter, the Strait of Hormuz. Because right now we're looking at a really bizarre, incredibly fragile pause in military action.
It really is a tense standoff. I mean, for the first time in 13 days, U.S. Central Command did not announce any overnight strikes on Iranian targets.
Which is huge, considering the past few weeks.
Exactly. And this operational pause is running parallel to intense back-channel diplomacy. Oman is acting as the primary mediator, trying to negotiate a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz.
And the diplomatic calendar is just completely saturated right now. You have President Trump stating publicly that Iran is, quote, getting more and more serious as the days go by.
Right.
But in the exact same breath, he's reiterating that U.S. forces remain locked and loaded.
Well, and the timing of all this is incredibly complex.
Oh, for sure.
Because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has a summit scheduled at the White House on Tuesday. And that summit actually overlaps with a memorial service in Washington for the late Senator Lindsey Graham,
who was obviously a figure fundamentally associated with aggressive U.S.-Israel posturing against Iran.
Right, so the geopolitical theater is just running at maximum capacity right now.
But we also have to ground that theater in the physical reality of the conflict. I mean, the human toll over the past month has been devastating.
It really has.
Inside Iran, since June 27, their health ministry reported 59 killed and 666 wounded. And on the U.S. side, the Pentagon just confirmed 4 more American service member deaths in this latest wave.
Which brings the total U.S. death toll to at least 21 since hostilities broke out in February.
That is a severe cost, which makes the mixed signals we're seeing on the water so confusing. Let's test the logic here for a second.
Okay.
We have an Omani delegation in Tehran, right?
Okay.
A halt in U.S. strikes, and top-level talk of de-escalation. Yet over a single 24-hour period this weekend, Iran's Revolutionary Guards, the IRGC, they physically stopped 4 different commercial ships trying to transit the strait.
They fired warning shots, too.
Right. They forced these massive vessels to alter their routes. And simultaneously, Iran-backed Houthi forces launched this huge drone and missile barrage into Saudi Arabia, striking Aramco facilities in Jizan and Yanbu.
Setting a major refinery completely ablaze.
So explain this to me. If you are actively negotiating a ceasefire through Oman, why on earth are your forces shooting at cargo ships and setting Saudi oil refineries on fire? It makes no sense.
Well, it does if you understand that in modern geopolitics, diplomacy and violence are not mutually exclusive.
Oh, how so?
They're basically two hands operating the same steering wheel. This is the core mechanism of asymmetric leverage.
Okay, asymmetric leverage. Break that down for us.
So if direct state-on-state military strikes between Washington and Tehran are temporarily paused, Iran cannot afford to look weak or lose its negotiating position.
Right, they still need to show teeth.
Exactly. So by utilizing proxies like the Houthis or secondary forces like those IRGC naval patrols, they maintain absolute pressure on the physical choke points of the global economy.
Ah, so it allows them to basically say, look, we aren't firing missiles at American bases today, but we can still break the global supply chain anytime we feel like it.
Precisely. It's perfectly calibrated escalation. They're building leverage at the negotiating table in Oman without necessarily crossing the threshold that would trigger a massive direct retaliation from that, locked and loaded U.S. military.
Wow. And that strategy is getting a massive technological boost from outside the Middle East right now.
Yes, this was a massive revelation this weekend.
Yeah, Ukrainian President Zelensky just announced that Russia is actively feeding Iranian forces satellite surveillance imagery of U.S. military bases.
It's a game changer.
And U.S. Defense Secretary Hegseth testified to this on Capitol Hill, pointing out that both Russia and China are facilitating Iran's targeting capabilities.
I mean, when a superpower provides real-time, space-based intelligence to a regional proxy, it fundamentally changes the math of the entire war.
Right, because a militant group with a drone is a nuisance.
Exactly. But a militant group with a drone and high-resolution, real-time satellite telemetry showing the exact shift changes in asset movements at a U.S. airbase, that is a strategic threat.
It's terrifying.
Moscow and Beijing don't need to fire a single shot to bleed American resources. They just have to provide the data that makes Iranian proxies drastically more lethal.
Which brings the consequences of this proxy war right to your front door. Because, going back to that Houthi strike on the Saudi refinery in Yanbu, it didn't just burn oil.
No, it sent a shockwave directly into the U.S. economy.
Exactly. When we talk about how a drone in Yemen impacts you, the listener, it's through the mechanism of cost-push inflation.
Right, because Brent crude oil, the global benchmark, had actually dipped below $95 a barrel on Friday.
Which was a brief bit of good news.
Very brief. Because the moment the market registered the refinery fire, Brent surged past $100 a barrel.
And because energy is the foundational input for literally everything else in the economy, that spike basically operates like a tax on the entire global supply chain.
Yep. Let's look at the pump. The U.S. national average for a gallon of gas hit $4.11 this weekend.
Just brutal.
That's an 11-cent jump in a single week. And it's a 38% increase since the war began in February.
And if you're out in Southern California, you're looking at $5.68 a gallon right now.
Exactly. But the danger isn't just that your commute costs more. It's how this sudden energy shock traps the Federal Reserve.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like hitting a pothole so hard it knocks your entire car's alignment out.
That's a good way to put it.
Because Wall Street analysts are already calling this the worst macro week of 2026. You had Brent crude surge 8%. New trade tariffs were implemented on 60 countries. The S&P 500 dropped 2.6%, and the NASDAQ fell 3.5%.
And all of this puts the Fed in just an excruciating bind. Their primary tool to fight inflation is raising interest rates, which cools down demand by making borrowing expensive.
But, and this is the kicker, the Fed can't print more oil.
No, they cannot.
Raising interest rates doesn't put out a fire at a Saudi refinery, and it doesn't protect a cargo ship in the Red Sea.
Exactly the problem. The inflation we're seeing right now isn't because consumers have too much money and are buying too many things. It's because the foundational cost of manufacturing and transporting goods just spiked due to a war.
So it's supply-side inflation.
Yes. But the Fed only has demand-side tools. So they're staring down these energy costs that are bleeding into every single inflation metric, and they might be forced to hike interest rates just to prevent a broader inflationary spiral.
Which is wild, because just 2 weeks ago, the market priced the probability of a Fed rate hike this coming Tuesday at what, 12%?
Yeah, 12%. And today, because of that drone strike, the probability has spiked to 35%.
So a geopolitical leverage play thousands of miles away forces the Fed to raise rates, which means the interest rate on your credit card goes up, your mortgage rates stay elevated, and business loans become prohibitively expensive.
Which naturally leads to corporate panic.
Right, which explains the massive tech sell-off we saw this week. But wait, it wasn't just oil dragging the NASDAQ down, was it?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
The financial dispatches are highlighting a massive AI capex shock.
CapEx being capital expenditure.
Right. Over the last few years, the whole narrative has been that artificial intelligence is this magical, frictionless software revolution. But the financial data from this weekend proves that AI is actually the most capital-intensive, physically demanding infrastructure build-out in human history.
I mean, Alphabet and Tesla collectively shed $500 billion in market value last week.
$500 billion.
Yeah. And the core driver of that panic is the sheer scale of what they call hyperscaler spending.
And for anyone unfamiliar with the term, a hyperscaler isn't just a big tech company.
Right. What does it actually look like?
We're talking about massive specialized cloud computing architectures. These are facilities packed with hundreds of thousands of interconnected GPUs operating as a single giant brain to train AI models.
And according to Visible Alpha, the consensus for 2026 hyperscaler spending just hit an astonishing $682 billion.
That's up $300 billion from just last year.
And the market is terrified because Microsoft, Meta, Apple, and Amazon are all scheduled to report their earnings this coming week.
Yeah, Alphabet already triggered this initial panic by revealing their infrastructure costs. And investors are just bracing for the rest of big tech to unveil similarly astronomical bills.
But wait, let's unpack this. We have a $682 billion price tag on AI infrastructure, while the broader economy is sweating $100 oil and inflation.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast.
It feels like deciding to build a massive, wildly expensive mansion while you're actively struggling to pay the electric bill at your current apartment. How long can big tech ignore the macro economy?
Well, this raises an important question about their priorities, because they view the macro environment as temporary, but they view the AI race as existential.
Oh, okay.
If Microsoft or Google scales back their data center build-out today to appease Wall Street, they risk falling behind in the foundational technology of the next century.
So they're trapped.
It's a classic prisoner's dilemma. They have to keep spending hundreds of billions of dollars, regardless of interest rates or oil prices, because whoever stops spending loses the future.
But the future they are building requires a staggering amount of physical resources today, and they are colliding head-on with local political realities.
Yes, the pushback is getting intense.
We're seeing a massive coalition forming right now, religious groups, labor unions, community activists, and they're pushing for severe regulatory oversight on these new AI data centers.
Because the physical footprint of a hyperscale data center is immense. It requires hundreds of acres of land, millions of gallons of water for cooling, and a continuous draw of gigawatts from the local power grid.
Gigawatts?
Yes. And local communities are realizing that big tech's existential race for AI dominance might actually result in rolling blackouts or spiked utility bills for everyday citizens.
Which makes this a highly volatile issue ahead of the November midterms. Republicans who previously championed data center expansion as a win for domestic tech dominance are now facing intense backlash from their own local constituents.
People just don't want their power grids compromised.
Right, and big tech is circling the wagons. Over a single 24-hour period this weekend, an open-weight AI alliance expanded to 35 major signatories.
Including Microsoft and OpenAI?
Yeah, essentially forming a unified lobbying front to fight off these sweeping restrictions.
It's the ultimate tension point. The digital world desperately wants to expand infinitely, but it is entirely dependent on a physical world that is currently breaking under the strain.
Which brings us to the physical toll we are seeing this weekend, beyond the battlefields and the stock market. Because the physical reality for a massive portion of the United States right now is a brutal, dangerous weather event.
It's awful. A stationary heat dome is locked over the central U.S.,
placing roughly 70 million people under severe heat advisories. Like we mentioned at the start, the Dallas-Fort Worth area is experiencing a heat index topping 107 degrees.
But what the National Weather Service is highlighting as the real danger isn't just the daytime high, it's the overnight temperatures.
Right, it's not cooling down.
Exactly. They are not dropping low enough to provide any physiological relief. When your body doesn't get a break from the heat at night, heat stress accumulates exponentially.
So it transitions very quickly from an uncomfortable day to a severe public health crisis.
Yep. And this extreme physical environment is directly altering the business of traditional entertainment and sports, too.
Oh, absolutely. Look at the Major League Baseball trade deadline coming up on July 31st.
Front offices rely on dynamic models to project future stadium revenue, right?
Yeah.
Which dictates whether they can afford to take on a $20 million contract for a new pitcher.
And right now, those models are flashing red. Teams are terrified that this accumulating heat, combined with $4.11 gas, is going to permanently suppress stadium attendance.
Because the physical cost of moving a family of 4 to a ballpark and sitting in sweltering bleachers is simply getting too high.
And we see that exact same physical constraint hitting legacy media. The federal hearing for the $111 billion mega merger between Paramount and Warner Bros. Discovery is set for August 4th.
But the backdrop of that hearing is pretty grim. Advertisers are actively pulling their third-quarter spending commitments.
Why? Because they are looking at $100 oil and predicting a consumer recession.
Exactly.
But here is the incredible contrast. While traditional physical entertainment is basically paralyzed by heat and gas prices, the digital AI-driven home economy is thriving on that exact paralysis.
It really is a split reality.
Look at what Jeff Bezos is pushing at Amazon. The reports detail a massive initiative called Project Lighthouse. The goal is to entirely scrap the traditional pile grid you see when you log into Prime Video.
And replace it with what?
A real-time, highly personalized feed curated entirely by artificial intelligence.
So it's an attempt to capture and hold your attention more efficiently.
Right. And the content itself is transforming. Netflix disclosed in their Q2 letters that they utilized generative AI on roughly 300 different productions this year.
300, wow.
Yeah. And this isn't just touching up visual effects in post-production. They're using AI for fundamental concept development and pre-visualization.
It's a massive structural shift in how mass entertainment is manufactured.
Talk about a split-screen reality. On one hand, you have incredible displays of human physical endurance happening globally this weekend. Richard Carapaz just won an agonizing, grueling stage 20 at Alpe d'Huez in the Tour de France.
While today's Pogacar holds the yellow jersey.
Right. Max Verstappen is grinding out a lead at the Formula One Hungarian Grand Prix. The Commonwealth Games just opened in Glasgow, where Ukrainian athletes are competing despite their country being a war zone.
And Fox Corporation is projecting a record quarter because 60.3 million viewers tuned in to watch the World Cup final.
But notice the dynamic there. The physical feats of human endurance are happening, but the vast majority of the population is experiencing them strictly through a digital screen.
Because the geopolitical energy shocks make travel expensive.
Yeah.
The accumulating heat makes outdoor recreation dangerous. The physical world is becoming a harsher, more expensive place to navigate, which naturally accelerates our reliance on the digital indoor economy.
And to power that digital indoor economy, we need AI algorithms to curate our streams and generate our content.
Which requires $682 billion in hyperscaler data centers.
Which puts an immense, unprecedented strain on local power grids.
Which makes the global supply of energy currently being choked off by drones and proxy forces in the Middle East even more vital.
It is a closed, accelerating loop. Every system is feeding the friction of the next.
It really is.
So when we step back and look at the whole board from this weekend, a pause in direct strikes in the Middle East forces Iran to utilize asymmetric leverage, resulting in a Houthi strike on a Saudi refinery.
Right.
That strike spikes global oil past $100 a barrel, threatening the U.S. economy with cost-push inflation and pushing the Federal Reserve closer to a rate hike.
And that macroeconomic fear collides with a $682 billion bill for AI infrastructure, triggering a massive tech sell-off and political battles over local power grids.
And all of it lands on a weekend where 70 million Americans are trapped under a 107-degree heat dome, priced out of going to a baseball game, and pushed further into an AI-curated digital reality.
It is a phenomenal chain of causality. And parsing through all this data, it forces us to confront a reality about the future of technology that nobody in Silicon Valley really wants to talk about.
What's that?
Well, we've spent this time looking at how big tech is spending hundreds of billions to build the ultimate artificial intelligence, assuming that whoever writes the best code wins the future.
Sure.
But if these AI models require massive, continuous, uninterrupted gigawatts of electricity just to function, and the global energy supply remains this fragile and subject to asymmetric warfare, well, it makes you wonder.
Wonder what?
Will the future of artificial intelligence actually be controlled by the smartest software engineers? Or will it ultimately be controlled by whichever nation commands the physical power grid?
The grid versus the code. Wow, that is a brilliant question to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us and exploring this landscape today. Keep questioning the systems around you. Keep looking for the underlying mechanics driving the headlines, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.